Kristen, thanks. The New Mexico man accused of beating and raping a 75-year-old woman he was working for is out of jail on bond this morning. He's still being tracked by GPS, though, in the meantime. Ernest Casillas was supposed to surrender to police over the weekend, but didn't. He was arrested on Monday. The judge lowered his bond from $500,000 to $50,000 because he didn't have any priors. Casillas made his $5,000 bond on Tuesday.
And we're staying on top of the latest developments in the James Boyd case this morning. The special prosecutor in the deadly shooting of the homeless camper wants to pinpoint which APD officer fired that deadly shot that killed him. Randy McGinn says her office has spent the last 2 weeks reviewing all of the evidence in this case. She says officers Keith Sandy and Dominique Perez each fired 3 shots at Boyd. The shot that killed Boyd was to his back, and that bullet has been sent to an outside ballistic expert to be examined to determine who actually fired the deadly shot. KRQE News 13 has learned the DA's office will not be prosecuting another APD case. Former Santa Fe DA Henry Valdez will take over the case in this. APD officer Pablo Padilla was charged with kneeing a UNM law student during a DWI stop. That student, Jeremy Martin, lost his testicle. Padilla's attorney wanted Kerry Brandenburg's office off the case completely, saying it was a conflict to use the officer as a witness in the DWI case, and then to prosecute him for what he did in the case.
3 minutes past the hour, Uber is maintaining pressure on the state as new rules affect its drivers. The PRC enacted a number of rules on the ride-sharing services, including insurance requirements and a requirement that drivers take drug tests after traffic accidents. Last week, the company Lyft announced that it was suspending operations on May 14th because it disagreed with the rules. Now, Uber is asking the state to reconsider, saying the rules are unlawful, unjust, and unreasonable. Some believe both companies already have an unfair advantage over traditional cab companies. The Los Alamos National Lab, or Sandia Labs, make technological advances every day. But did you know here in Albuquerque, we're at the forefront for medication and vaccine development?
Yeah, Albuquerque Clinical Trials has had a hand in drugs or vaccines treating everything from high blood pressure to diabetes. News 13's Catherine Mazzone has more on what she's learned so far. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. Now, the name says it all. Albuquerque Clinical Trials does exactly that. It conducts clinical trials for drugs and vaccines with people from across the state. Albuquerque Clinical Trials, they're contacted by pharmaceutical companies and given almost everything they need: the protocol, the medication or vaccine, and the placebo pills. And that's an inactive drug. Now, when they're blind studies, patients are assigned a number, and those administering the drug don't know who's getting the drug and who's getting the placebo. Now, in some trials, only the pharmacist preparing the drug knows what's what. Albuquerque Clinical Trials says sometimes the drug companies have people in mind, but they find most of the patients themselves.
We have a lot of people that are really interested in trials, and there's 2 reasons to be interested for an appropriate person. One is, I don't want this disease, or I want to get better, or I want this drug.
Now, Breton says the other reason to get involved is selfless. They want to help others who are sick. Now, you could also get paid for taking part in a trial. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Now, some trials taking place can help deadly diseases that don't have a cure. One right now is to help cure a disease that kills 15,000 people every single year. We'll tell you about that in our next half hour.
New Mexico senators are supporting a federal minimum wage increase. The Democratic measure increases the hourly wage $1 each year until we reach $12 per hour in 2020. For the past 6 years, it's been frozen at $7.25. Several states and cities have already acted on their own wage hike, but critics say businesses, some of them anyway, can't afford to pay their workers. Senator Tom Udall says more than 250,000 New Mexico workers would get a raise under this new measure. Major questions this morning about the case against 6 officers charged in the death of Freddie Gray.
Yeah, the state's attorney says the knife Freddie Gray was originally arrested for is not against the law to have in Maryland. And that's why she's charging 3 of the 6 officers involved with false imprisonment, arguing Gray should have never been arrested that day. But lawyers for 2 of the officers have filed motions saying the knife was illegal. They want the state to produce the knife to prove they're right. Meanwhile, Attorney General Loretta Lynch is considering a request from Baltimore's mayor for a federal probe of the way the city's police department has operated and whether officers have discriminated or used excessive force.
Developing now, a family is filing suit in St. Louis City Circuit Court, asking the city and state of Missouri to release adoption papers on a closed hospital. Zella Jackson Price had her baby 50 years ago at the Homer G. Phillips Hospital in St. Louis. She says she was told her daughter had died, but never got to see her. She had actually been adopted out, and the pair were recently reunited. Price says she never signed away the rights to her child. Attorneys say 20 new cases with similar circumstances spanning from the 1950s to the mid-70s are popping up. They say all of the mothers were young African-American women who arrived at the hospital alone without family.
And an NFL investigation into Deflategate is now complete. The final report Wednesday found New England Patriots employees likely deflated the footballs used in the AFC Championship game against the Indianapolis Colts. Quarterback Tom Brady is also suspected to be at least generally aware of the incident. The league will now decide if anyone should be punished. Patriots owner Robert Kraft called the report's conclusion incomprehensible, but would accept any discipline from the league. A lot of people are going to be talking. And we start with this. News 13 first told you about a police officer who abused his authority to harass and stalk women in a 2012 investigation. Now taxpayers are paying for it. Former Santa Fe Sergeant Michael Icecant racked up complaints from citizens and fellow female officers. 8 women sued him, the city, and former police chief Raymond Rael. Now, as part of a settlement agreement, the city of Santa Fe has to pay out $770,000. Icecant admitted to illegally using a law enforcement database to get information about women.
He was misusing all the authority and the trust the public puts in him to stalk and harass these women.
As part of this plea deal, Icecant got a year of probation and agreed to never work as a police officer again. The city of Santa Fe would not comment. And the story is trending on KRQE.com. Albuquerque's mayor is launching a new initiative asking you to help panhandlers by not giving them money. The initiative, called There's a Better Way, was announced just yesterday.
If you hand $5 out your window today to a panhandler, that panhandler can go down to a fast food restaurant and buy a hamburger and fries.
So instead, the city wants you to donate the money to the United Way of Central New Mexico. The group will use the money to feed the hungry, provide shelter for the homeless, and to help the mentally ill. On special assignment, meantime, News 13's Kim Holland uncovered that police hardly ever cite people for aggressive panhandling. That's when somebody blocks traffic or approaches car windows without being invited over. It's also illegal to ask people for money at bus stops, from people standing in line, and in downtown or Nob Hill after dark.
It just makes Albuquerque look like a bad place.
It's usually the same ones over and over, so I see them. Some of them I know by firsthand. I know their name.
There were only 11 citations for aggressive panhandling over the past 5 years, only 1 in the past 6 months, and all of those tickets were dismissed, the charge pleaded down in court. Albuquerque police say they just don't have the manpower to enforce the petty misdemeanor charge. The Albuquerque City Ordinance doesn't really have much teeth. The first violation is a written warning. The second one can bring up to 90 days in jail and a $500 fine. To see the ordinance and the places that it is illegal to panhandle, visit our website right now, KRQE.com. A group of New Mexicans is helping to figure out if one potentially groundbreaking vaccine actually does what it claims to do. That's because clinical trials for the drug are happening right here in Albuquerque. News 13's Catherine Mazzone learned more about this trial. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Crystal. Now, Albuquerque is one of 200 sites in 20 different countries where this new vaccine is being tested. Now, it's supposed to treat a deadly diarrhea, a disease that kills 15,000 people each year.
It's a very important disease. It's very nasty. The word morbidity is the big fancy word, which means makes people really sick. Mortality, everybody knows, means it kills you.
Dr. Elizabeth Breton from Albuquerque Clinical Trials is referring to Clostridium difficile, or C. diff. This disease can live just about everywhere. People most affected, however, are older or have spent time in the hospital for surgery. Now, that's because you're often given antibiotics when you have surgery that kills the good bacteria in your gut. Now, that makes you vulnerable to C. diff. But one drug company hopes to change that with these clinical trials.
If there's nothing out there to prevent this disease, and this is the first thing that may be effective, and you always have to say may until the data is in, this is an incredibly exciting thing.
Now, there will be 15,000 participants in this study, and Breton is still looking for more. So if you're Interested, you can get paid for it. Just head on over to our KRQE app to learn more. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Now, each test person is important because the more participants means the more data to determine if it actually works. The vaccine is supposed to last for 3 years, so this is a years-long study. Turn out to this, Bernalillo County will share its ideas on revamping one of Albuquerque's busiest traffic corridors today. The county is planning to dig up about 3.5 miles of Bridge Boulevard from New Coors, stretching east to the other side of the Rio Grande at 8th Street. The county is considering adding landscaped medians, wider bike lanes, wider sidewalks, and possibly roundabouts at Bridge and Isleta and 5 Points. The county's ideas are not set in stone just yet. And you can weigh in this afternoon starting at 4:30 at the South Valley Senior Center. That's near Atrisco and Bridge. The plan presentation begins at 6 o'clock.
We're keeping up with APS's new superintendent, who is already talking about his plans for the district. Dr. Luis Valentino says he met with Education Secretary Hannah Scandera this week. They talked about the controversial teacher evaluations and park testing. Yesterday, he also spoke with News 13, saying he's all for the district's new truancy initiative.
There are many times when we have to go out into the community to articulate that to parents, to empower them to better understand the value of that.
Also in store for APS, 2 top aides who will make more than $300,000 combined. Valentino says that's because they'll play an important role in the district. The State Court of Appeals has ruled that a convicted rapist will stay in custody after being caught with R-rated movies. The court says Robert DiNapolis violated his probation by having the films. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the rape and kidnapping of 2 women. He was released on probation, but sent back to prison in 2012 after he was caught with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and other DVDs. The Journal reports the court upheld a judge's decision to revoke DiNapolis' probation because the movies contained graphic depictions of rape.
We turn now to news out of Washington this morning as a 2016 presidential race appears to be getting underway.
Mike Huckabee, the very latest Republican to enter the 2016 presidential race, kicks things off at a rally in Iowa just 1 day after announcing his bid for the White House. His stop there yesterday was part of the former governor's Factories, Farms, and Freedom Tour. This campaign marks the second time that Huckabee's run for president. Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton is also staying busy, visiting the homes of big donors in San Francisco. Clinton will be back in Silicon Valley tomorrow for another big donor event.
And new details this morning. Missouri police say they have arrested the man accused of killing a 19-year-old college student he contacted on Craigslist. They say Taylor Clark was trying to sell his car on the website when he was found dead Tuesday night. Police say 24-year-old Michael Gordon met up with Clark on his lunch break in a parking lot and shot him. They say that he then tried to hide his body in nearby woods and went back to work. He's being held in a St. Louis County jail and is facing charges of first-degree murder and assault.